Hey, welcome to today's Audit Tuesday. This UATest podcast highlights developments in cybersecurity and GRC. Today's episode is about an important announcement from one of the most prominent vendors in identity, Okta. They have released that no password was required for specific users under certain circumstances. To understand that the threat and to discuss mitigation on best IAM security practices, UATest has asked Greg Kutzbach to discuss. Greetings, Greg.
Good morning.
First of all,
Before we
Greg,
get into this too much, guys, right now there has been a slight error in the LinkedIn Live. What is going on is it's audio only. To look at the visual, what I've done is posted the Zoom right there. If you click on that Zoom, you will see the anything we present, anything we present. Take it away, guys.
all right. So, Greg, can you please introduce yourself to the Audit Tuesday audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Greg Kutzbach. I am a TA and a fractional CIO over at MR2 Tech Solutions out of Irvine, California. So my job is to manage the security environment for companies, to develop a roadmap, and to help prioritize them on how to do security enablement and technology enablement.
Great.
Before we get into that, Greg, we were talking a little. Can you help the world understand the immense value of a fractional CIO?
Oh, absolutely. So so every company needs leadership for their finances, for their strategy, for their vision, for the major areas, and therefore technology, security, and everything needs leadership also. That basically means you have all these risks out there, and that's what security people are all fixated on. And then you have all this technology that you're spending all this money on, and that's what CIOs are focused on. So the CIO role is technology enablement to make sure that the technology that you're buying you're actually using, and you're actually helping productivity and efficiencies and all that sort of thing. Otherwise, you're buying stuff that you're not using. You're not using to actually make the company as competitive as possible. Now, on the security front, there's built frameworks by companies like NIST, semi-government, or ISO or CIS that basically have like a roadmap of how to make your company secure. They're extremely well established. They're well thought over. There's been tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on their development. So it's not like I'm bringing a unique vision to the table. I'm just helping enable something that's very well established as industry standard, world standard best practices. So when we're talking about like identity governance, there's a section in every single one of the risk frameworks out there on doing this. This isn't opinion. This is extremely well established, and I'm just here to help set priorities, help prioritize budgets, and help build a roadmap and get them over the hump of how to actually make this happen.
Great. So can you tell us about the announcement that Okta made a few weeks ago?
Oh, absolutely. All right, let's talk about this. So, okay, so the flaw happened because of a July 23rd of this year update and was resolved on October 30th update. Basically, they changed the crypto standard of a key hashing, which is basically for the situation of an Active Directory LDAP delegated environment. So a lot of people know that Okta is a way of doing AAA for an organization, but sometimes you just want to have Okta manage the applications, the SSO applications, your SaaS apps, your Salesforces and whatnot, and you still want to rely on your Active Directory environment. A lot of people like this little hybrid thing. And so that means that Okta has to reach over into that Active Directory environment and then basically say, okay, username, password, user ID, and then bring that back, and that creates the cache session keys, and off you go. But This wasn't really an Okta flaw initially. This is a limitation of the bcrypt hashing algorithm that basically said once you go above a certain number of characters, all the output becomes the same. It was an easy fix. Within a day of them being notified of the flaw, they fixed it. But it allowed a attacker to authenticate by only providing their username if they had the cache stored key of a previous authentication session. Now, this is only for users with account names above 52 characters. It's a really long username, probably really, really rare. In fact, there's actually no reports of this vulnerability being exploited in the wild. But can you think of where you do really weird usernames? I'll tell you where. Protected accounts, service accounts. People, a lot of times admins become really creative with these like special accounts that are only ever going to be existing in one thing. Where does a protected account work in Okta? Where you have the Okta authenticating into the Active Directory environment in order to get those usernames, right? We just talked about how they were just doing a pass-through. So what do administrators oftentimes do with that? They have a static password, no MFA, a long username, a long password, and they're like security through obscurity. And so, and that's where I think it would be the highest flaw, or a highest amount of risk is in those weird service accounts where people think that long passwords and long usernames are going to protect them against everything, and it's just not the case. And so, the actual name of this is Active Directory LDAP Delegated Authentication. That's the piece of the pie here in Okta that was in question. I have a lot of thoughts on this. That's funny because it's not actually something that was exploited. It's a real edge case, but it shows that you have to be vigilant on your identity, regardless of whether it's a common use or just the fact that you can have a flaw, and you have to have a way of catching that.
I think that's the key point for this discussion. Is that, hey, no one's bashing Okta or any of the IAMs. They're all wonderful and we believe in them. But that this stuff, there are always holes, always gaps. I mean, we don't have to bring up Caesars and MGM, but if this equipment is not monitored, there are always openings in all software. And I think that's what you're saying, Greg.
That's exactly it. Like if anyone's ever watched the old Get Smart program, it's my favorite way of thinking of security. You walk in the front door and you have all these different layers of vaults. You have to protect yourself through security in depth, multiple doors. So one door is a password, another door is multi-factor, another door is identity governance, another door is your review of access logs. Another door might be that you can only access through approved IPs. On and on and on. You basically make life really hard for attackers. That's really what our goal here is. You make it hard enough, they don't get in.
Yeah, there's no one's picking on Okta here. They came forward and they let people know this, but it was really interesting. Greg and I had a discussion, and Greg is amazing at forensics and helped me understand, what the parameters of this were. So we're reiterating that what the point of this discussion is not to pick on Okta, but to highlight that this stuff has to be monitored. And IAM is probably the most important, well, in my humble opinion, is the most important of the components in your identity stack.
Yeah. So with that, Greg, do you agree that IAMs are the key to secure the enterprise, especially for identities?
Yeah, it's absolutely the key. I mean, literally, how do you log in? It's identity. Okay, so I talked about AAA. I threw out an acronym without describing it. That's authentication, authorization, and accounting. So authentication is who is the user, and you're verifying them with like a password or MFA. Authorization, what do you have access to? So what applications are they allowed into? Are they allowed into the HR systems? Are they allowed into finance? Are they allowed into the customer lists? What are they allowed into? And then accounting, who did what, where, how can I review all those logs? It literally is the keys of the kingdom, or as you put it, the key to secure the enterprise. Yeah, it's the central pivot point.
So that's why the hackers go after the identities in IAM like MGM and Caesars, correct?
Yeah, and get the skeleton key. That's the way to go.
Nice.
So Greg, what are some of the best practices around IAMs, especially concerning this hack?
Sure. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit the official recommendations real quick, and then I'll hit some of my other thoughts. Okay, so one is yeah, let's see, to review your system logs regularly. So in this case here, review your logs between July 23rd and October 30th of this year, specifically for usernames that are greater than 52 characters. So there you go. Implement MFA. This attack doesn't work if you have MFA on the account. So once again, MFA, we're saying it over and over and over again for years, but we're serious about it. It really does fix a lot. Next piece is the next generation of authentication, which is your password lists, your FIDO2s, your Okta Verify FastPass, if you want to go with Okta stuff, or anything that's a WebAuthn that will lock you down and be a phishing resistant authentication. Continuous security assessments and updates in the authentication systems that you use. So that would be using something like VulnScan or some other vulnerability identification tooling to be able to see. We gotta admit, there's a lot of news articles that flow across our board. How do you look at what your hardware is across your inventory, your enterprise, what your software is across your enterprise, and what potential vulnerabilities you might be vulnerable to? Well, you use tools to help you with that. Next thing is if you do have SaaS applications, we all do, or particularly if you have admin access to a SaaS application, whitelist an IP space. Make it so you can only access it from certain environments. And that way the hacker not only has to get your password and whatnot, but they also need to be in your environment. Make just one more door in for Maxwell Smart. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's some pretty solid recommendations. Some of those were Okta, and some of those are just good practices.
All right. And these practices are not only recommended, but are part of enforceable standards like HIPAA, PCI DSS, and FFIEC, and privacy guidelines, correct?
Yeah, it's a mix and match across there. Like for instance, in HIPAA, MFA is not explicitly required, but it is strongly recommended as a best practice for protecting electronic protected health information. Or FFIEC, which is in the finance industry, recommends it but doesn't require it. Whereas PCI DSS does require it. So it's kind of a hit and miss across all the different standards out there. But what's funny is a lot of these compliance standards like HIPAA or PCI DSS, they're very industry specific. But if you go with something that's a bit more enterprise wide, that would be like an ISO 27001 or a CIS 18 or a NIST 800-171. Those are going to hit good practices for pretty much every organization. And the nice thing about government, I guess, and I want to say nice thing about government, is that these other control structures are geared specifically to the industry without burdening you with controls that don't actually affect that industry. So long answer, yes. Short answer, do better than what they say.
And let me just pause right there, Greg, because we've talked about this and you've had some good recommendations on that. So a lot of these regulations, like I built IAMs in the past. That's why I have an affinity towards Okta and the others. And then I got into compliance through various, side doors, et cetera. And people always refer back to, like NIST CSF 2.0, which is not a cybersecurity framework, right? And if you start adhering to that, then a lot of those are mapped and then copied into what you said, the industry specific ones, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So then that's just relevant because when we get into the UATest part, we certainly mapped it towards CSF for it to be relevant to all the compliance measures.
Yeah, and if anyone ever wants to do this, again, I just want to reiterate this. This is not my opinion. This is not Garrett's opinion. This is industry standard stuff. There are Excel cross sheets you can download all over the internet from official sources that will map all of these controls against each other, and you'll see that if you follow this control from NIST 800-171, it maps directly over to this control from ISO 27001, and exactly over to this subcontrol from CIS 18, to this control on HIPAA, to on and on and on. They're saying the same, many of the same things across the different structures, because there's only so many good practices you can follow. And then the rest of it is the job of a fraction, or a CIO. In my case, I'm a fractional, to help you prioritize them. Because if we go in and we look at all these controls, we're like not implemented, partially implemented. We basically give a pretty low score for most companies off the get-go. And if you have low scores across many different directions of security, we have to help prioritize that. Where do you put your money first? Where do you put your effort first? And that's hard. It's a journey.
So, Greg, what industries must conform to these security standards?
FFIEC would be your financial industries, HIPAA, anyone that holds medical information, PCI DSS. It's many tiers of handling credit processing with different requirements depending on how you tier it. Long story short, it is any regulated industry vertical must conform, and basically any company that wants to protect themselves should conform to the general use standards. But they don't have to. If you're not handling credit cards, you don't have to do PCI DSS, for instance. Just do the.
And Greg, isn't a rule of thumb, you start with the data. If it falls under, PHI, personal healthcare, or it falls under, financial PII, or now defense data, CUI, that's where you have to basically, then if you're holding sensitive data, then you fall under the regulations.
Yep, you're working in a regulated industry. You sign the paper that says, I want to make money on this, and I'm willing to take this responsibility to make this money.
Because when people ask me, like, well, what industries are regulated? I go, well, elementary schools have PHI, so they're regulated. So there you go.
Yep. And they have kids, special regulation.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. So back to the IAM security. Shouldn't enterprises be doing regular reviews of entitlements?
Yeah. So you should be doing reviews of entitlements, of enforced policies, and reviews of activity, along with the continuous reviews of vulnerability against the company's software and hardware assets. So it's really that you have to stay on top of it. It changes. Your user entitlements change. Your software, even if you're keeping the same exact software, the software version changes, even if you didn't change it. Again, we live in a software as a service world. So yeah, you have to stay on top of all this regularly. More the better. Continuous is the hot word these days.
And Garrett, this is where UATest comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So here is a few slides to help me explain and make it relevant to today's discussion. Okay, UATest, as we discussed with Greg's wonderful Get Smart multiple doors. So Okta is great. It's your front door. It's the head of the snake, as I like to say it, in the identity world. What we do is plug into Okta. We've been doing this for 5 years, over 3.7 million attestations, and provide these relevant. We get the access request. Hey, someone needs access. That's listed in this PRAC-4 in this CSF 101. Here's the one that's extremely relevant. This was relevant to the CSER to the MGM tag. It's relevant to our customers that use the product and relevant to this hack. What it does is let's say someone gets hold of your admin privileges, okay, in Okta, and then they do something insane like create a new IDP or whatever they did in the other hacks. What we see in the uses of this product is customers. What they do is the auditors use the product for the audit, for the access review. The security people get these triggers. That's been implemented across the board, and we can show you how to do that with a product. The bread and butter of the product is user access reviews, and this PRAA05 and CSF 2.0, implemented at least privilege by reviewing. That's what we do. That's what we've automated, and we'll show a real quick demo around that. And that's what Greg was just saying, that we have to be reviewing these privileges because flaws can come into our systems, etc. But wait, there's more. Okay, here's how we work. So here's wonderful Okta. It's part of your systems and all that. And this is you out there in the audience, you're the risk manager or the security manager, and you got all these compliance measures and all these identity resources. We imbibe the resources. And since we're mostly talking Okta, Okta can become, and this is how our customers use it, can become the center of auditing, not just your Okta privileges, but all your other resources by using our SSO mechanism. That means you already have the manager set up. Take those siloed resources, pumping it to us, and we are just taking the entitlements, not the credentials, and then the access review happens as literally helping someone with their CISMM certification, and it's done through, it pushes it out in the correct way, in a documented way, pushes it out to the actual people who are in charge of those users, and the attestation report occurs. That's what's required by law. That's where in all these industries, user access reviews. To make this easier on you, what we've done is created a AI system, and now it's patent approved AI system. We call it a zero trust identity trust score because it does. It follows in the zero trust pattern of making sure that your privileges are being reviewed, automated by us, and then you can make your modifications. If you are a Gartner guy, this falls under ITDR, Identity Threat Detection and Response. What it is it's pulling from Okta. We do it for other IAMs as well. This is what we'll be demoing. Pulling from Okta, the actual identity roles, entitlements, etc., that come from Okta. And then we pull it in and we do a AI analysis of it. What are the resources here? Okay. And then we basically mash it with some other parameters, and voila, an identity trust score is determined. Okay, identity trust score is determined, and information around why that person has a low trust score is shown. And this is better than just a. Let's do a little demo as soon as I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen. There we go. Absolutely. And let's demo this. Absolutely. There you go. Stop sharing. Lots of buttons.
So,
Take it
so
away, my
Kasha,
friend Kasha. Take
hey,
it. Sorry,
Kasha,
Bill. Kasha, you're on mute. Oh, allow me to share. Okay. Nazia, can you let Kasha share? All right, give it a shot there.
Garrett, am I audible?
You are
Yes.
audible.
I
got-
didn't have controls over the
Yeah, there you go.
microphone.
It's all good. It's been one of those
All right,
kind of
let me-
days. Someone
Let me go ahead and share my
changed
screen.
me, set up the LinkedIn Live wrong, so it's been that day. So we'll play through.
All right,
All
great.
good.
So can you see the screen?
We see the screen. You're playing through. Thank you, Kasha.
All right, so here's the U-Test dashboard, and this tenant is tightly integrated with one of my Okta environments. Since the demo is for the Okta audits. Now, after the integration, what we generally do is review the identities that we pull in real time from Okta into U-Test, not the credentials, not the passwords, just the entitlements. And this is the data and this is the process that identity trust score is based on. So first off is your identities, how many times and how often your identities are being reviewed. That's one parameter. The second one is the segregation of duties. For example, a person from marketing should not be, as Greg mentioned very wisely before, that a person from, for example, marketing or sales should not be able to get into the group that is dedicated for finance, or they should not have visibility into other departments that where they don't belong. So that's where the segregation of duties come in, where you can set up rules for applications or and the groups that, for example, if I go into this rule here, I have mentioned that anyone from human resources or enterprise admins or Okta administrators, anyone from these three departments, if coming into, for example, finance group audit and they have access to the finance group, flag that user for me. So you can set these rules before you go into your group audits or application audits. So depending upon each group and application, you can modify these rules or you can create multiple rules for those applications and groups. How they work, I'll come to that later. But the third one, the third parameter that Gerrit mentioned was the group anomaly. So anyone who has access to finance group, if I have more access compared to what Gerrit has in the same group, that is when I would like my audit to flag that user or at least show it to me in the matrix. What matrix looks like? This is the identity trust score coming from within UAttest. One of the parameters is last reviewed user. That's coming from within UAttest. These two, segregation of duty violation and the group anomaly coming directly from your Okta instance. So if I expand upon that, let me just see how many do we have here. So SED violation is just one user. So if I expand upon that, see what's there. It's at a medium risk, and when I click on that, it will give me a bit more details, like a description that a user risk score between 45 to 90% determined by the segregation of duty rules established within UAttest. So according to that rule, this user poses a medium risk or maybe high risk. What's the remediation? Review user access based on the SOD rules. So you need to go into the finance group and see why this person has access to finance group if he belongs to marketing and sales. That's one. The other one is last reviewed on, which is self-explanatory. When was the last time a user was audited or a user was reviewed within UAttest? So you have like 170 users. So if you expand upon that, these are all high-risk users because they were reviewed, let's say, 90 days ago. So that should not be the case. They should be continuously reviewed. All the users within the organization, within that IAM, should be continuously reviewed. And in this instance, it has been 90 days since the last review. So all those users are at high risk. So once you click on each user that is posing a high or medium risk, it will tell you why is it at high risk and description and the remediation step. Audit user access from UAttest. You need to create an audit for these users and review them. And that's when this bar will go back to where it was, go back to normal at low risk. And the third one is group anomaly. I've already shown you. One user maybe has, like this one here, he has more access as compared to other users within the system. Here's the group anomaly. I click on the wrong button here. So high risk user, a user exhibiting deviation of greater than 90% compared to the other users within a group based on their assigned applications. What's the remediation? Remove the user from application this, and that. So once you take that step, the identity trust score will improve and it will show maybe lesser users as compared to what it's showing today. So in future, what we have on our roadmap is to be able to not only expand upon these parameters, but to keep adding more to the matrix and to be able to, click with a single click, we should be able to create an audit out of that high risk users, all of them, from the same matrix that you're looking at. So this is on our roadmap, perhaps in 2025, but the initial version includes these three SOD violation, group anomaly, and the rest last reviewed on, which is coming directly either from UAttest or from the IAM, in this case, Okta. Gerrit?
Great stuff, Kashyap. And the point of this showing this was that, hey, as Greg kicked off and said that IAMs are wonderful, they are the keys to the kingdom and of our identity. They just probably should be monitored a little closer. And this was a good use case of that. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, so hey, thanks, Kasha, for that. So Greg, why don't you tell the audience how to reach you?
Sure. So I work at MR2 Solutions at Irvine, California. Come down to our office, or it's Greg at mr2solutions.com, our website, mr2solutions.com. And we're also having a golf event January 17th to come and meet more of you. We're an event-driven company, so we like to go mix it up. That's on January 17th. Reach out to me if you're interested.
And it'll be
Great.
daytime. I just played glow golf the other day. I hit a ball. Right,
This
right,
is,
Greg?
this is yeah.
Be daytime.
then- And we at UAttest can be reached at uattest.com or just write us at info@uattest.com. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on Audit Tuesday. All the best.
All the best.
Always fun. Thank you.